right, hello everyone. My name is Tyrone Brown, and I will be doing the Intro to Reporting Services webinar today. Sorry about the minor technical delay. Okay, just a little bit about myself. I am a senior business intelligence developer here at Pragmatic Works. I have about 15 years experience working with Microsoft SQL Server and the entire Microsoft BI stack. I am a certified database developer, and I have a degree in math and computer science from Bloomsburg University here in Pennsylvania. Just a little bit about me. I reside currently in Philadelphia. I have some hobbies, playing the guitar, bowling, traveling, and I like to consider myself a runner, although I'm not that good at it personally. And okay, so for today, the webinar agenda is going to be split into 4 lessons, about 15 minutes each. So lesson 1, I'm going to do just an overview of reporting services, what it is and what it's used for. In lesson 2, I'm going to discuss the SQL Server reporting services architecture. Lesson 3, we're going to create a report, just a basic report. And number 4, I'm going to show you how to deploy the report and to deliver it to the end users. So the overview. So what is reporting services? It is a product that allows users to create reports and to share information with the business users. And this is important because no matter how good or how much data you have, it's useless unless there's someone there to consume the data and use it in a useful way. So for instance, you could create, let's say, an inventory report that would help the warehouse manager of a corporation decide what products to buy to fill the warehouse and how many of those products they need to purchase from a vendor. Or you could create a report for your company CFO, a financial report for the end of the year, maybe to determine yearly bonuses for the employees. Of course, we know that's very important. So, I mean, the possibilities with reporting services, they're basically endless. The problem that we encounter is the person who's usually in charge of making these business decisions are not IT professionals like you and me. So you'll rarely see maybe a vice president or a marketing manager going in, sitting down, logging into SQL Server, and querying a SQL database to get their data to answer their business questions. As a side note, there is a growing popularity in what is called self-service BI. So self-service BI is basically an approach to allow non-technical IT users to access and analyze data for their needs. But that's another lesson, I guess, for another time. Okay. So I think one of the main benefits of SQL Server reporting services is that it is included with SQL Server. So if you have a SQL Server license, reporting services comes along with that SQL Server license, which is important because some of the other third-party software for reporting can run you a lot of money, into tens of thousands of dollars in licensing fees. Another advantage of SQL Server reporting services is the drag and drop capability. So a person who can be a report developer, they don't really need programming experience. They can start off right off the bat in creating reports. But on the flip side of that, there are also many advanced features of reporting services. So you can create sub-reports. There's lots of charting and graphing features there. So if you want to create large enterprise reports, the advanced features are there. So in a lot of reporting courses, they can last up to 5 days. So you can spend, 40 hours in a reporting course for an introduction course, and then you can take another advanced course. That'll be another, 40 hours to learn the advanced features. So there is a lot to learn with reporting services. So hopefully here we can touch on the basics. Okay, so here is a layout of the SQL Server architecture. So I'll just touch briefly on the main points of this diagram. So in the middle here is the main processing engine of SSRS. So that stores things like the report definitions, It renders and delivers the reports and handles report security. To get into the details of this probably is an entire course in itself, so we'll just stick to the basics. We can consider this a black box, for lack of a better term. So here at the top, we have the report user, the report designer, and the report manager. So this is how we, the users, will interact with the reporting services engine. So right here, report user, that's pretty obvious what that is. That's the person who is actually consuming the information from the reports. Here is the report designer. That would be people like us who are in charge of laying out and designing and putting the data onto the reports. And the report manager is, I guess, also would be an IT person or developer. I think they're more in charge of managing the reports, so taking care of things like security, permissions, and setting up a folder structure for access to the reports. And here to the left, we have data sources. So these are any source of data that you have. This obviously here isn't a complete list, but these are some of the more popular options, the first one being SQL Server. You can use OLEDB or any data source that has an ODBC capability, or Oracle. So there are a lot of data sources, and actually when we go through the report and I build the report, I can show you all of the options that are there. And here to the right is more for the end user. So you have the output formats that you can display the report in. So you have HTML, Excel, PDF, and ways to deliver it. So you can email it, you can put it to a file share, you can put it on a report server, which I'll show you later. Okay, so next we're going to go through creating a report. So let me go here. Okay, so to create a report here, I'm going to start with basics. I'm going to open up the Visual Studio, and I'm going to create a new project. So when creating a new project, you're going to have a list of options here to the side. You may have some more, you may have some less than you see here. For me, it all depends on which Visual Studio options you have installed. So for here, we're going to go under the Business Intelligence, and we're going to go into Reporting Services to create a report. Now there are two options here. One is the Report Server Project Wizard and Report Server Project. So the first one is a wizard. It will just walk you through step by step to create a report. And this one, Report Server Project, you're going to create it from scratch. So I'm going to create a project here from scratch and call this Webinar. Thursday Webinar. Okay, so hit OK here. Okay, so what this is, so now I have a blank project. So the first thing I want to do is to create a report. So I'm going to go here to the right to the Solution Explorer, and I'm going to add a new item. And then you're presented with the list of new items to add. And so here we're going to select a new report. There we go. So now here's the report. As you can see here on the file, it's the report RDL, which it created a file called report.1 RDL. RDL stands for Report Definition Language. And so you can see here, there's nothing here. It's just a blank report. Now in the designer here, you're going to see two tabs. You're going to see a design tab, and you're going to see a preview tab. So the design tab is what you use when you're designing and laying out and changing a report and adding data to it. And the preview tab is going to show you what the actual report looks like. So if I click here on the preview tab, it's going to come up obviously blank. There's nothing on it. So let me just do something here. I'm just going to add text here just to show you the two. Oops. Hello world. So if I go here to the preview tab, you can see the hello world. That's just a very simple example. And one more thing I want to show you here about with the blank report is once this report.1 is created, behind the scenes, the report definition language is an XML file. So everything within that report definition is here in an XML file. So you could really edit this file too if you wanted to edit the report. But as you notice, the report's blank. I put one text box here, and it's already this much code. So I mean, if you're familiar with XML, there's a lot of information that could go in here. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I can probably count on my one hand how many times I've actually gone in and worked with this XML file. But it's there, and it's good to understand it's there. So for instance, say I wanted to come here and change this from hello world to changed text. You can see it actually changed the report definition. So I'm going to close this. And now we're back to our blank report. Okay, so you have a report. The first thing you need to report, obviously, is data. And there are two components here that we need to understand to get data into the report. It's a data source and a data set. So the data source, which I'm going to create here, it's a connection to the underlying database. So I'm going to create a data source to the database that I'm using here at the data sources. And then there's also a data set, which is it's a structure of the data you're retrieving. So it'll make sense in a minute once I walk through this. So I'm going to walk through this right now. So the first thing I want to do is create a source to a database. So here, I have a database server here that's running SQL Server 2012. And for a database, I'm using AdventureWorks. And for those who are familiar with AdventureWorks, most people are, but I'll just run through it briefly. It's just a sample database that's shipped with Microsoft SQL Server. Well, it's not shipped with it, but you can download it from Microsoft's website. And it just is what it is. It's a sample database. It's of I believe it's a fictional bike manufacturing company. So for those of you who are in database development, I'm sure you're very familiar with AdventureWorks. Those who are new to database development, you probably will be very familiar with AdventureWorks. I mean, I use it all the time, especially for training. And it just has some tables here, and some stored procedures, and some views. So for this particular demo, I'm going to use a view from AdventureWorks database. So it's called Employee Department. I'm just going to run this here. So this is going to return this information. It's pretty simple. We have an ID here, and it just shows the name of their employees, their job title, the department, and the date that they started. So let me go back to our report. Okay, so first thing, I want to create a data source. So I'm telling the report, this is where you're going to retrieve the data from. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to add a new data source. So what I'm doing now is creating a connection to the SQL Server database that I just explained. All right. So here we go. So first box is data source name. This is just for human consumption, so you need to give it a descriptive name. So if you're coming back and using this report, or someone else is, working on your report, you need to give it a descriptive name. So I'm just going to call it my local database. I'll call it my local AW for my local AdventureWorks. And I need to edit the connection information. So here I'm just going to select the drop down. So what that's going to do, it's going to just search the network and find any available SQL servers. This is my personal network, so I have two, SQL Server 2012 and SQL Server 2008 R2. So I'm going to select the SQL Server. I'm using Windows Authentication. And I'm going to select my AdventureWorks 2012 database. Everything's okay. And that's it. So now I have a connection to the actual database. So now the second part, I need to create a data set so I can access the information I just described earlier. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to add a data set. Now again, you can change the name here to something that's more descriptive. So I'm just going to call it AW employees. And I'm going to embed this in the report. So the first drop-down is data source. So I'm going to click here, and there's only one data source, which makes this easy. It's going to be the AdventureWorks here. And then you can put here how you want to get the data. I'm going to use the query here, the one I just showed, that's going to just do a select statement from this view department. So I'm actually going to select this, copy, and paste it in there. Hit OK. So now I have the data source and the data set. The data set, I call it AW employees, and now you can see all of the fields here that are available within this data set. So if you want to go here and take a look at it within the designer, close some of this out. Just hit execute, and you can see the data set here also from the report designer. Okay. Good. So now I have my data source, and now I have my data set. So what to do now? Now I'm going to just create a table to list out the data on the report. So I'm going to come here to the toolbox, and I'm going to add a table. I'm going to dump it right here in the middle of the report. And like I said earlier, it's drag and drop. So let's say I want to do something here that makes sense. I'm going to add in first name, middle name, last name, job title, and department. So what I can do is take first name here and just drag it right into the first data field here. And it automatically creates a header that is the same as the field is dropping in there. I could change this to anything if I wanted to, but I'm just going to leave it as first name here. Let me drop in middle name, drop in last name, drop in job title. And as you can see, these blue bars that show up, this is where the actual field is going to go. So, and I can go here past last name and just drop it here. It's going to put in the job title. And I'm going to put in job department. So there we go. So if I save this. So this is pretty simple. So this shows a table with all of the information that I just pulled off from the data source. Okay. And just as a note, let me delete this. Also, if I wanted to do the exact same thing, a lot of times with tools like this or any programming tool, there are always more than one way to do things. A lot of them are just personal preference. So if I wanted to drag a table here and say instead of dragging these, there's also a little icon, as you can see here, called the field picker. So I can just go here to the data, part of the data here, click here, and it'll show you a list of the fields. So I can just put first name here, last name here, suffix here, and so on. So like I said, it's just more than one way to do the exact same thing. All right. So, all right, let me do this again. All right, so we're going to make our report now. So I'm going to start with first name, last name, suffix, job title, and department. And okay, so there we go. Now I'm going to, you can edit these You can resize them, you can respace them. So for instance, I want to add a little extra space for department. So you just come here to the arrow changes, and you can drag and make this bigger or smaller. So I'm just going to make department a bit bigger, job title a bit bigger, maybe suffix a bit smaller. Okay, so you can see now that there's more room for that data. And you can also say I want to format this. Which is just like Word or like a word processing program. You have all of the things you can do here to the text. So you can make it bold if you want, italics, underline, same as Microsoft Word. You can come in here, change the color, font color, background color blue. Like I said, you have bold, underline, italics. You can change the font, the size, the color, all that stuff. I could change it to 20 point if I wanted. Then I would just have to resize this. But we're just going to go back to the normal. But the option's there. But you know what? For this, I am going to make this bold. You can make that bold. And now you see the report preview there. The top's in bold. Okay, so here's our report. So looking at the report, the data's there, but I kind of want it to look a little better. So a good feature to use here would be grouping. Now, if you notice here, there's a lot of redundant data. So you have document control numerous times, you have engineering numerous times, executive. So what I want to do is create a group. So I can put all the departments together. So this is actually this report would be called employee by department. So what I'm actually going to do before I do anything else, I'm going to drag a text box here, resize this, and I'll call this employees by department. So that's going to be our report title. And as I mentioned earlier, we have the formatting options here. So I can center this, and I'll make it bold, and make it a little bit bigger here. Make it 16 point, and make it in italics. Okay. I'm just going to take this box, and I can make the size bigger, so it's not overlapping there. So now we have employees by department as the name of our report. So now I want to get rid of the redundant data. So what I want to do here, there's a feature called grouping. So I'm going to group anything with a like department into one group. So I'm going to come here. Okay. So I'm going to select the data, and I'm going to add a group. So the group I'm going to add is a parent group to this particular row detail. And you're going to get this dialog box. So the reporting engine needs to know, what do I want to group on? As I said earlier, I want to group by department. And I'll add a header. So here we go. So now we have our department. So now you can see here, we have department with the header and document control. And as you can see, these are all the document controls here. These are the employees under document control. These are the ones under engineering, and so forth. And just as a note, let me go back here. You can also, like I said earlier, there's more than one way to do this. If you wanted to, you could also take department and drag it down here to the row group section. So if I wanted to add a row group, I could just dump that in there, and it does the exact same thing. Like I said, just personal preference. All right, so let me re-add this group. So we have our group, and our group header, and there we go. Okay, So there we go. So now there's our report. Looks a little bit better, not perfect. So I'm thinking, what would make this report look better? First thing that stands out for me is the fact that there's redundant data. So you have the department here, you have your document control group here, but you also have it here. So to me, personally, that doesn't really make sense. So I can just go through here and come through the editor. I'm just going to just dump that out. So now that's gone. I can expand this, make it look nice. And there we go. So there's our report. It looks the same as it did before, but I just got rid of the redundant data over here to the right. And as another note, so I'm going to go back here, just a quick bit of information. I'm going to go back into the report definition. So as you can see with the report definition, this file grew by a lot. So for every attribute, everything that you do here, every bold, italics, every text box, every picture, everything goes in this file here. So like I said before, this file gets very large, very fast, and this is only, a very, very basic report. So just a little side note there. Okay, so report looks good. I'm trying to think of what else I want to do. Another thing you can do with these groups, which I find extremely useful, especially with tab reports like this, or mostly with financial reports, most people aren't going to want to see all the information. And if they do want all the information, they probably don't want it all at once. So what I'm going to do is create a way to expand and collapse this. So with the grouping, there are some options that you can collapse all these, so you'll only see document control, you'll only see engineering, and then you can expand it to see the data that is within that particular group. Let me explain this. All right. So here I'm going to go to the row visibility properties. So under here, there are a few options. You can show it, which you can see it now. You can hide it, or you can show or hide it based on an expression, or it can be toggled by a report item. So that's what we want to do. We want to be able to hide it or show it by toggling a report item. Let me just go back out here to show you something really quick. So it's tricky to click on this thing. Okay, as you can see here, I can expand my window a bit. We're going to want to toggle on this particular text box here by department, since we want to be able to expand and collapse the departments. So I clicked on here, and you can see that this is actually a text box called Department 1. You can name it anything you want. You can just leave it at the default. I will as Department 1. So I go in here. I'm going to go back to row visibility. And now, instead of clicking off the display can be toggled, I'm going to click that on. Now it's going to ask you, what do you want to toggle this on? As I just said, it's going to be the Report 1 box here. So there we go. So now you can see here, the report pretty much looks the exact same. Obviously, the only difference here is the plus sign next to the departments. So how that works is I can hide that, and so on and so on. So you can only see what you want to see. So you can hide and expand. So let me go back here. I think a better way to do this would be to go here. Go here to the row visibility, and you know what? I'm going to hide this instead. So now when we start and open a report, all the information is going to be hidden. This is just another way to do it. It would all depend on the particular requirement that you have for your report. But as you see now, I can come in here and I can just expand it just as I did before. All right. So let me save that. And another thing I wanted to note before I go into deployment, when I created a report here, it defaults to, well, it creates the file, report1.rdl. In a production environment, obviously you want to change this name, so I'm just going to change this to employee report. Okay. I just want to save that to a different name called employee report, because when you deploy it, it's going to deploy to the name that you have here. So you probably want to make it something fairly descriptive so you don't confuse your business users. All right. So now that we have a basic report, you need to deploy the report. I mean, if you have a report, it's no good if it's sitting, on your local machine. So you need to somehow get this to the people who are going to be using the report. So I'm going to go here, and I have this already set up. This is the report services server that you will have set up on your machine. And this is where everything gets stored. All your reports are going to get stored for your users to access. And as you see here, this is empty. And you can do this just like you would a file structure on Windows. So for instance, I can create a new folder here, call this test folder 1. Create a new folder here, call test folder 2. So what I just did is I created 2 test folders here at the root of the reporting services dashboard, for lack of a better term. And it's just like your Windows file structure. You can open it here, and there's nothing here, but I can just, type in subfolder, and you can create another folder within that folder. Go back here. So you have subfolder. So then you would have test. You could have a subfolder. This is convenient for once you have large amounts of files. So this is how you would separate them into categories. So you wouldn't have test folder 1, test folder 2. You would have manufacturing, HR, maybe executives or finance, and then you could build a hierarchy of reports there. So I'm going to just delete these. Delete these. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to deploy a report to this part here. Okay, the first thing I want to mention, so to deploy it, very simple process. You come here to build and you hit deploy with the project name here. But before I do that, I need to make sure that all my project settings are complete. So here is a list of the property pages for the report project. The ones that we're focusing on here are the target report folder. So as I just did, created those folders, you can specify which folder the report will go to. And you also have to specify the target server URL. So I have to put in the URL of the reporting services server. But before I do that, I'm going to cancel out of here. So this is the reporting services configuration tool that comes with reporting services. I'm not going to go through all these options here. I'm just going to show you some of the basics. So this is how you would configure your report server. So anything in here with the configuration, you can do it here. So I just connected to my SQL Server 2012. You can pick a service account. and then it will show you, this is what I want to show you here. This is the URL for the actual web service. So the point that I just showed you with the properties, when you have to deploy it to a URL, it's right here. So this is where you would get that information to. And you also have to set up a database. So reporting services, it uses a SQL Server database. So here you can see server name is my server, and then report server. So if I go here, there's going to be, in this particular database, there's going to be a report server database. And it was configured there. And there are, this is more or less the inner workings of reporting services, but it does have a SQL database and it writes data to and from there. Just wanted to make a note of that. So here's the report manager URL, and these are just some other settings for email, the account, encryptions. These aren't important right now. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to now try to deploy this report. So I'm going to go here, go to properties, and the target server URL. So I'm going to put in my local host. Put in a report server. So these all look okay. So let me come here. I'm going to go to the home. And hit deploy. So you'll hit deploy. You'll give it a couple of seconds. It will go through the entire process. Takes a little bit here. Okay. And hit refresh. And there it is. You'll see a folder called Thursday Webinar. So what it does is I have it set to, if the folder doesn't exist, it's going to create the folder. So I deleted the 2 folders that I had there earlier. So now it just goes through and it creates a folder called Thursday Webinar. So let's say I want to go back here. And just say I want to do, I wanted to put in maybe the word another folder. I can redeploy this to another folder if I want to. Oops. Save this. So I can, so what I did is I redeployed this to another folder. So now I have Thursday Webinar with an employee report, and then I have another folder with the exact same employee report. Why I did that is if you deploy it to a separate folder, these 2 are independent of each other. And for a practical purpose of that, say you have a production and QA. So, you know what, let me just go here. And I'm going to show you here. If you go to the folders here, you can manage it from here too. So say I want to call this production. So I changed that to production. We're going to change this one to development. I always like to use real world examples. I know test folder 1 and test folder 2 are probably not good examples. So I'm going to apply this. So what I did is I changed this to development and production. So now I have the same report in both environments. But what this is good for, say you have a production report that everyone's, you know, the finance, manufacturing, they're all using. you can have a development folder also. So I can come in here and say, all right, me and the developers want to make some changes to the report and test it and see if it works. Or the same with QA. So you can take this, you can change it, and then post it to this development folder without actually affecting production. And on another note of that, each of these folders also have security settings to it. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, you would have a person designated as the report manager. So that person, and that person very well could be the same as a developer, but that person can go in here and then manage security. So, if you have your production reports, you can come in here and then you can just edit the security for the entire folder. So I can go here and I can add come in here, then I can add the permissions for a particular person. So I would put in my name, and then I can go in and select, what they want to do. And there are these 5 predefined roles. The browser is for your end users, basically, someone who just needs to look at and download the reports. Your content manager, that would be the person who manages the content. And you have your own My Reports folder, so you could add security for that. Publisher, what I just did, publish the reports, and someone who can actually view the report definitions. And let me just go back out of here. So you could do that for a particular folder, which would, production would be used for production. You would only have production users in there. Developers could go here. So they could work in 2 separate areas on the same server. And if you go here to production, same thing. These are identical. You can come here to security, edit, and then you can go through and add someone. So it's kind of nice that you can do security at the folder level, and then you can also do security at the actual report level. And the way this works is when you upload this to the report server, it uploads the report definition file. So for instance here, I can actually download this file. So if I wanted to go into the report and say, you know what, I just want to go, I can just go in, save it somewhere, save it on my desktop, and then the report file will be there. That's convenient. I think it's convenient, especially if you want to send someone a report, or maybe there's a report online that you want to download and work on yourself. You can just go right in and just grab this file, and it's just an XML file. So I mean, you can take it, you can edit it, you can do whatever you want with it, but it's just convenient to know that you can use those files. Or say you have a project here, you can just go in and then add an existing item and then select that file and just bring the report into here. And so now this is here, everything is working. Oh, one more thing I wanted to show here. Okay, so you have your report. You can see here it's working. I'm just going to expand everything here. You know what, let me change this. I'm going to have this expanded just so I can show you the whole report. So I can go back here. You know, this is actually a good example. I can show you how to keep these 2 separate. So I'm going to go back here to the row visibility, and I'm going to show everything. I want to see the entire report instead of having to click through each and every one of those. So I'm going to do that here. So I'm going to preview, same report. Everything now is expanded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check my properties, and I'm going to deploy this to development. So I'm going to deploy that to this folder here. So just as you can see, if I open the report now, everything is collapsed. So if I come here, make sure that's development, and deploy. All right, so that's done. So now if I go here into development, there's my new report. So now everything is expanded, and then here, production. So there it is. So you have the same report, 2 copies of the same report. So like I said earlier, if you're a developer like myself, you can go in, develop all you want, throw everything into development, and you're not going to affect the production users. So if I go here, so wanted to show you here is some of these options here at the top. So here we have the page numbers. I'm on page 1. There are all right, so let me go. So I'm starting here at page 1. This is the forward button. This is all standard. So every report you have is going to have this toolbar at the top, which is very convenient. And these are scrolling for pages. So you can go through pages 1, 2, 3, 4. This goes page by page. This is last page. This is front page. And this is very common with anything else you've used. I'm sure we've all seen this before. And you can do sizing here. Just like any other web page, you can searching, you can find things on the page. Yeah, I mean, these are all very common. I'm sure we've used them all before. And this, let's go back here. Okay. And this here is refresh. So if you are looking at a report and maybe you want to update the data, you can do it by coming here and hitting the refresh button. So if you went, say, something in the data, like some of the data changed in the data source, you can just come here. You don't have to rerun the whole report. You can just hit refresh, and it will just come through and just update it with the current data. Obviously, print button. And for here, what you can do is once you have the report, you can pretty much save it to any format that you want here. I think more of a common one would be a PDF file. Say if you want to save this to a PDF, it's all natively built into the reporting engine. So you click that, hit open or save. I'll just hit open, and it sends it out to a PDF file. Or, I mean, you could do Word, you could do Excel. I mean, a lot of people like to do Excel just because they can kind of take a report, especially a report like this that's created from a table. They can take it to Excel, they can download it, and you know, a lot of people who are maybe not good with databases are good with Excel. So let's just say hypothetically this was a financial report. They could just come here, drop this into Excel, and then you know, maybe do some adding, do some calculations on it. So I think it's very, very helpful to have these in reports. Just another quick topic I want to touch on. This isn't the only way to get a report. You can also have these reports delivered automatically. I don't have time to show that in this course, but you know, you could generate a report and you could do it, say, on an interval. So, okay, here's a report called Monthly Financial Analysis. You can set it up, you know, every first of the month at 10 a.m. It's going to, behind the scenes, generate a report. And then once the report's generated, it goes out to a set of predetermined users in any format that you want. So, I mean, that's just another way to get the information. I mean, this here is the most common and obviously the most easiest. But yeah, there are other ways like that to get the reports with the subscription service. I think that's extremely useful. I mean, a lot of times people, they look at the same data. So, say I'm the financial guy. I want to see sales every Friday at 10 o'clock. So you can set that up. So a lot of this can be automated with SQL Server reporting services. But like I said before, there are tons of features with this. This is just a tip of the iceberg introduction. But I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, so I should be doing another webinar shortly to touch on some more of the advanced topics. Just to show you. So I'm going to do another webinar with some of the more complex topics that I touched on today. If you have any questions for me, there is my contact information. I will leave it there for a minute. You could email me, or I do have a blog now that's listed there at the bottom. So if you send me a question, I can either reply to you via email, or I probably will put it on the blog. Just, I'm sure if you have a question, I'm sure other people probably have the same question. So yeah, if you have any questions, just email me, and I can email you a response, and then you can check my blog, and the info should be there.